Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Randana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Randana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Randana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Randana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astotra Shata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati UttamaSloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bhangam Gayate Gram Yat Kapatamaham Vande Shri Gurundinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Romapada Swami Yate Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Yate Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Srinivadi Pasyata Deshitarine. Good morning. Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 70, Verse 25. Rajanuchu Krishna Krishna Para Krishna Krishna Prameyatman Prapana Bhaya Bhajana Vayam Tvam Sharanam Yamo Bhava Bita Pratagdiya Rajanuchu Krishna Krishna Paramayata Yatman Prapana Bhaya Bhajana Vayam Tam Sharanam Yamo Bhava Bita Pratagdiya Rajan Ucho Krishna Krishna Paramitaman Prapana Bhaya Bhanjana Vayam Tam Sharanam Yamo Bhava Bitaha Pratagdiya. Please chant. Rajanaha, the kings, Uchuhu, said, Krishna, Krishna, O Krishna, Krishna, Aprameya Atma, O immeasurable soul, Prapana, of those who are surrendered, Bhaya, the fear, Bhanjana, O you who destroy, Vayam, we, Tvam, to you, Sharanam, for shelter, Yamaha, have come, Bhava, of material existence, Bitaha, afraid, Pritak, separate, Diyaha, whose mentality. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The kings said, as related through their messenger, O Krishna, Krishna, O immeasurable soul, destroyer of fear for those who surrender to you. Pardon me. O immeasurable soul, destroyer of fear for those surrendered to you. Despite our separatist attitude, we have come to you for shelter out of fear of material existence. Purport. Sridhar Swami explains that the kings present their entreaty in this and the following 5 verses. In this verse, they take shelter of the Lord. In the next 3 verses, they describe their fear. And in the last 2 verses, they make their prayerful request. So that's the official purport, the official Bhaktivedanta purport. However, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elaborates in a similar way. Their entreaty is stated in these 6 verses, text 25 to 30. Thus, they first take shelter, saying Krishna, Krishna, twice out of respect. Aprame Atman implies we are approaching you for shelter, even though ignorant of your true identity. And the phrase beginning Prapana implies that we have come to you for shelter in knowledge of the fact that you give shelter to those who surrender to you. Pratag Diyaha means those whose mentality is that they refuse to entreaty your devotees and instead think that there is someone else other than you to deliver them from their misery. So, Jarasandha has taken 20,000 kings captive as an effort to perform a 100,000 king sacrifice, which in and of itself is pretty far out. 100,000 people is quite a lot, but 100,000 kings is even more. So we know he's at least 1/5 of the way there, having stolen 20,000 kings. And now the kings are trying to take shelter of Krishna because they don't want to be sacrificed. Fair enough. So they've managed to send out a messenger who goes to Krishna and appeals to them on behalf of the kings for shelter of Krishna, who is at this point also a king. But what these kings are doing isn't a mundane thing. Actually, we know from Srila Prabhupada's teachings that to take shelter of Krishna is the perfection of life. And for us as devotees to take shelter of Krishna means to surrender to Krishna. It's one of the 26 qualities of a pure devotee. It's called Krishnaika Sharana. They're always being surrendered to Krishna. Krishna Eka means only to Krishna. And as we know from the word for word, Sharana means surrendered to. It's very nicely elaborated on in a book by Satsvarup Goswami called Vaishnava Behavior and 26 Qualities of a Vaishnava, where he goes into two topics, namely Vaishnava behavior and 26 qualities. It's really an appropriate name for the book. And he elaborates in so many nice ways, quotes a lot from Bhagavad Gita in this particular section of Krishnaika Sharana. And the first verse he quotes is 1866. Sarvadharman pratyaja mamekam sharanam braja aham tam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion, just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Which is it's a pretty instructive verse, and we can talk just on that verse for quite some time. But I remember hearing a lecture from Indra Prabhu at one point where he kind of tweaked it just a little bit to be a little more applicable in Kali Yuga. He said, Sarva Dharman Pratyaja Nam Ekam Sharanam Braja. That we're supposed to surrender everything to Nama Prabhu and chant Hare Krishna as much as possible. So this is it's a liberty taken, but it's a pretty safe liberty to take. Mahaprabhu tells us in the CC that the holy name in this age, the holy name is the only way. You know, we can't send a messenger to Krishna and ask for shelter. And we can't particularly follow any of the other processes to the standard that they were followed in previous yugas. We can't even live more than 100 years without great difficulty. So what to speak of meditating for 10,000 years or more? We can hardly keep air in our lungs, let alone suspend that air, go underwater and meditate without becoming disturbed. Everything in this age is contaminated in one way or another, technically speaking, so we can't properly worship the deity because everything is contaminated. So what we have is Nam Prabhu. Nam Prabhu is uncontaminated because it's Krishna himself. So in this vein, Krishna even tells Arjuna in the Gita twice to think of him, remember him, so we can understand the importance of surrender in that way, as well as surrendering our thoughts, desires, feelings, emotions, intelligence, to engage in constantly thinking of Krishna. Because if we're thinking of Krishna, we don't necessarily have time to think about how I'm going to gratify my senses today. Because we're thinking about Krishna, and when we think about Krishna, we think of how to gratify Krishna's senses, make Krishna very pleased. And Mahaprabhu tells us that there's 4 things in particular that we surrender, which is our life, our wealth, intelligence, and words. And complete surrender means giving those things completely to Krishna and engaging in some way by the direction of the spiritual master to give those things to Krishna. And our sannyasis, they carry a tridanda, not a tree, T-R-E-E, but a T-R-I, tridanda. 3 bundles, or a bundle of 3 sticks, which represents completely giving body, mind, and words to service of Krishna, service of Guru. So this is what we're aspiring for as devotees, whether we know it or not. What we're aspiring for is to completely give ourselves to Krishna. And as for myself, I'm not there yet. I have a very long way to go. But there's the surrender comes in stages. We can make progressive advancement, and it's symptomatic how far we've advanced by how much we've surrendered, how much we've renounced, how much we've engaged ourselves in Krishna conscious activities, how much we've rejected serving our own senses or trying to use our own intelligence for serving our own senses. So in the CC, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it gives some instruction on this progression. As soon as an intelligent devotee sees an unwanted creeper growing beside the original creeper, he must cut it down instantly. Then the real creeper, the Bhakti Lata, grows nicely, returns home back to Godhead, and seeks shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna. Prabhupada says in the purport, if one is misled by unwanted creepers and is victimized, he can't make progress back to Godhead. Rather, he remains within the material world and engages in activities having nothing to do with pure devotional service. Such a person may be elevated to the higher planetary systems, but because he remains within the material world, he is subject to the 3-fold material miseries, which is where the kings are at. They're being particularly subjected to the adibodhic misery, or the misery created by being imprisoned by another living being. They're trying to escape that imprisonment and that miserable condition, because I'm sure their prison wasn't very nice, by taking shelter of Krishna, which is very similar in some regard to what we're trying to do and escape the material world for Krishna's service. And actually that's the only way to save ourselves from this 3-fold material miseries, is to take shelter of Krishna, to surrender to Krishna. Prabhupada tells us much earlier in the Bhagavatam, in the 3rd canto, that when the creeper is fixed, then the fruit of the creeper comes into existence, and the gardener who nourished it is able to enjoy this fruit of love, and his life becomes successful. So, plants aren't particularly induced to produce fruit if they're in hostile living conditions or if they're fighting for resources. Similarly, our devotional life, if it's fighting for our attention, if it's fighting for our energy, it's not going to be induced to produce fruit because it's not thriving, it's struggling and fighting for its existence. And also in the 3rd canto, Kapila Dev advises his mother, Devahuti. He says, "My dear mother, I therefore advise that you take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for his lotus feet are worth worshipping. accepting this with all devotion and love, for thus you can be situated in transcendental devotional service. In the purport, Prabhupada explains, Bhakti is therefore nirguna, free from all tinges of material qualities. Although the discharge of devotional service appears to be like material activities, it is never saguna or contaminated by material qualities. Another word that Prabhupada uses is unalloyed. So in metallurgy, an alloy is a combination of metals. But unalloyed means that there's no combination. It's, pure gold or pure aluminum, pure whatever metal. And we're also trying to attain that with our devotional practice by not contaminating it with material desires or anything of that nature. Just trying to solely serve Krishna, worship Krishna, take shelter of Krishna by surrendering to Krishna, because for us, shelter means surrender. Surrender means shelter. We can't have one without the other. And Prabhupada says as much in the Bhagavatam several times. It's really all I'm doing is trying to, different angles of attack, present this argument. He says in the first canto, the Lord is the only shelter of fearlessness for the surrendered soul. One cannot save himself from the cruel hands of death in the material world without having surrendered himself at the lotus feet of Krishna. Which all of this brings the question, how do we take shelter of Krishna? How do we become surrendered to Krishna? And in that regard, when we're looking at this, Narottama Thakur says, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya Chitate Kriya Akya, that we should accept things as genuine by studying the words of saintly people, the spiritual master, and Shastra. That is to say that we don't make our own inventive means of surrendering to Krishna, or come up with our own process, or try to amalgamate from this, that, or the other. These people say this, and those people say that, and I think this, and this seems more fun to me than that, and I don't want to do that. That's too austere. We should be listening to our particular authorities in disciplic succession, and if they say, oh, well, this person said, then we can understand, okay, they're coming from a point of realization where we might be prone to confusing ourselves by going a little too far left, right, or otherwise. But we don't have to accept those things blindly either. This is also a very important process. It would be a sign of lack of advancement, actually, if we were just blindly accepting everything we heard from day one. It shows that we're not thinking. This is a thinking movement. We have to use human-level intelligence to actually have realization. And that requires faith. How do we develop faith? The process that I was given for developing faith in Krishna consciousness was really simple. It started with chanting Hare Krishna for 5 minutes a day, for a week. And this is the same thing I share with new people that I meet. Just chant for 5 minutes a day for a week. Read for 5 or 10 minutes a day for a week. listen to kirtan for 5 minutes a day, something, a manageable amount of time for a manageable period. Excuse me, and see what happens. And if you see a positive result, then continue to do it. And that positive result puts the initial bit of faith there that, oh, well, they said if I do this, then I would, get a certain result. If I chant for 5 minutes, I'm going to have a little bit more peace of mind and a little bit more clarity, or whatever it is, whatever that positive result is for the person that's new to chanting. And then when they're told, all right, try chanting 1 round on beads. Okay, that's doable. Okay, now try 2 rounds. Oh, well, if 1 round was nice, then 2 rounds should be twice as nice, right? All right, well, try a little more. 2, 4, 8, 12, 16, on and on. Read for 10 minutes a day and see what happens, or read a handful of verses from the Gita with the purports, and, see what how your mind starts to change its thinking. Then, okay, we'll try a chapter, come join this reading group where we read for an hour together and discuss. It's little by little doing, 10 little things can amount to something much bigger. Because it's not, like I said, it's not about just blindly accepting. We have to have faith in the process. We have to have faith in Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas. We have to have, faith in Krishna, ultimately. And we don't get to point B by skipping over point A. For example, if I'm trying to go from here to Los Angeles, I can't just be in Los Angeles. I have to take steps to get there. I have to have a plane ticket or a train ticket or a working automobile. And even, with the plane ticket, if I don't go to the airport, then there's no point in even having the plane ticket. And I can go to the airport with the ticket, and if I don't get on the plane, then I'm not going to make it to Los Angeles. And if I don't behave on the plane, then I'm going to make it to the Los Angeles County Jail. But at least I'll be in Los Angeles. But ideally, I want to go to Los Angeles. Okay, I buy the plane ticket. I arrange a ride to the airport. I go through security without issue. I act like a person while I'm on the airplane. I get off and I do whatever my desired business is in Los Angeles. But it's step by step, and it's the little things, because just going to the airport isn't going to get you there. But it's little things added up together that create the completion of the goal. And in this connection, in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada explains that a pure devotee takes shelter of Krishna in such a way, and Krishna is so grateful that he accepts him and gives him all kinds of protection. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where it is said that if a person who is about to die takes full shelter of the Supreme Lord and places himself fully under his care, he actually attains immortality and becomes eligible to associate with the Supreme Lord and enjoy transcendental bliss. So we are adding little things together, following the given processes by the acharyas, trying to purify ourselves, purify our intentions, clear out the unwanted weeds and protect the bhakti creeper, so that we can become purified and take shelter of Krishna. And particularly, we make Krishna grateful, as it says in this quote from the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. We make Krishna grateful. How? By following prescriptions of his devotees, Guru, Sadhu, and by following the prescriptions of Krishna himself. Krishna and his representatives, they're coming. Specifically, he says in the Gita, he comes during times of irreligion to reestablish religious principles, or he sends his representative. So he's come as Lord Chaitanya in this particularly degraded time of Kali Yuga, and he came with his associates, and he continues to send his representatives, and we, in this room or listening to this class or in this Hare Krishna movement, we get to, if we choose, we get to receive the benefit of all of that effort put forth by Krishna and by Krishna's representatives, by his servants, by participating in this process, if we choose to. Because it's optional. Nobody can force you. Take a tomato plant and force it to produce a tomato. You can't. You can't force it to produce fruit. But you can give it a suitable place to grow, lots of sunlight and suitable temperature and humidity and water and nutrients. And by that, providing a proper space, then you can facilitate the growth of fruits, of tomatoes. Otherwise, if you just take it, squeeze it, and say, if you don't produce tomatoes, it's not gonna work that way. So we have to be willing participants in our own spiritual advancement. Otherwise, we're probably not going to make very much spiritual advancement. As I was saying earlier, there's so many processes just within the bhakti practice, but then there's so many other processes as well, like Ashtanga yoga, all of these other different yoga systems that aren't particularly well functioning in this day and age. For several reasons, but mainly our own problems within ourselves. We're incapable of austerity, we're incapable of high levels of purity required for these practices. But Krishna is so merciful that not only does he come as Mahaprabhu, not only does he empower certain personalities to come and help us, but he comes in a most tangible form, in a way that he doesn't come in any other age. He comes as his name that everybody can take advantage of, and there's not all of these hoops to jump through. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's the famous verse that the holy name is the only way, right? But it's, as far as I can tell, it's the easiest way. How much does a deity cost? They're not terribly cheap. I was looking at my emails the other day, and I got an email from a vendor, and they were advertising some deities they had, and they're $300-400 for some neem deities. And then you start talking about larger, smaller metal or stone or whatever. Prices can get by my estimation at least, pretty astronomical. But Nam is free, and it's freely given. It costs nothing to hear Hare Krishna, and it costs nothing to chant Hare Krishna. And that is, according to my estimation at least, why it's so much easier to attain Krishna in this age. We don't have to have a certain amount of money. You don't have to be born in a particular place or in a particular family or with particular skills or abilities. Anybody with functioning vocal cords can chant Hare Krishna. And following the instructions of the acharyas means that we're doing certain things. We're participating in Nam Bhajan, which is 2 parts. We have our daily prescribed number of rounds, and we also have certain times, at least for us who are residing in the temple, we have certain times where we're obligated to come together and chant Hare Krishna. It's one of the first things we do in the morning is assemble together and chant Hare Krishna together in the morning, and we also ideally do that in the evenings together as well. These 2 aspects, japa and kirtan, are the 2 things that make up our Nam Bhajan. They're internal and external manifestations, the japa being internal, kirtan being external. And we can't do one without the other. We can't go internal without going external, and we can't go external without going internal. They work very well together. And even at a slightly deeper level of analysis, there's 2 forms of kirtan that we do. There's the kirtan that we do together as devotees in the temple room, which is more of an internal thing. And then there's the Sankirtan. We go out and try to induce other people to chant Hare Krishna as well, which is an external aspect. And it's said that we can't go deep in our japa without doing Sankirtan. This is, I think, another Indra quote, that doing the Sankirtan particularly helps the japa. And that's my own practical experience as well. When I was living in Houston, going on book distribution, my japa got so much better. We know that book distribution is particularly pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. And so when we please Srila Prabhupada, just like when we please Krishna, then they become obliged to reciprocate with us. We get a little bit of mercy by doing that. So if you want to, this is UttamaSloka's japa tip of the day. If you want to have better japa, do Sankirtan. Another aspect of this is sadhu sangha. It's highlighted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that even a moment's association can mean attaining success. And we can get this association in kirtan, and by doing Sankirtan, because this is the activity, this day and age, this is the activity of sadhus, is doing some form of kirtan. And later in the 22nd chapter, that verse about sadhu sangha is in the 22nd chapter, and later in the 22nd chapter, it said, Lord Krishna is very kind to his devotees. He is always grateful and magnanimous, and he possesses all abilities. A learned man does not give up Krishna to worship anyone else, which speaks to the idea of being unalloyed in our practice. And then the purport, Prabhupada says, Krishna is very kind to his devotees. He is always grateful, and he never forgets the service of a devotee. He is also completely opulent and all-powerful. Why then should one take shelter of a demigod and leave Lord Krishna's shelter? If one worships a demigod and leaves Krishna, he must be considered the lowest fool. Practically speaking, we can see that a lot of people try to take shelter of so many things: sex, money, power, fame, intoxication, other people, certain places or things. People are always trying to take shelter of something to escape the material disease, the literal dis-ease that we feel in this material world. And even some devotees might try taking shelter of demigods, even though they're trying to practice Krishna Bhakti. They might want to take shelter of some demigods to try to get some help in Bhakti. And while there's not necessarily an explicit problem with that, the definitive nature of our process makes things pretty clear-cut. Guru leads us to, we can see this even reflected in our altar. On the first altar, there's Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta, Gaur Nitai. And then on the second altar, there's Radha Krishna. Why is it laid out that way? Because it looks good? No. Because through Guru, we can approach Nitai Gauranga, and through the mercy of Nitai Gauranga, we can approach Radha Krishna. In the Gaudiya Mats and in some ISKCON temples, they'll have Radha Krishna Gauranga for a couple reasons, but namely because in this age our process for approaching Radha Krishna is through Gauranga, and also because Gauranga is non-different from Radha Krishna. But it's not without that mercy, that kripa. And Krishna himself has so many different ways of helping devotees along the path of bhakti that we don't really need to take shelter of anyone or anything else. As Balaram, who is Adi Guru, he sends our gurus to enter into our lives to give us guidance and direction. And Nrsimhadev is known for removing obstacles on the path of devotion. And so we can see, the power of Krishna himself in his different forms, his representatives. And it's said, I think Bhakti Purushottama Swami took from some scripture and explained that by placing his lotus feet on the head of Ganesh, Lord Nrsimhadev enables Ganesh to remove material obstacles. So we can approach Ganesh for the removal of material obstacles. But if we want to advance on our spiritual path, then we don't have a need for that. We can just approach Krishna. We can approach Guru. We can approach Lord Nrsimhadev, and Lord Nrsimhadev will clear out the obstacles on our spiritual path out of his unlimited mercy. And the continuation of that mercy is helping even the gross materialists that appeal to his servants or his representatives. It's such a simple thing. There's one bhajan we sing from Govinda Das. Bhaja hure mana Shri Nanda Nandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare, where Govinda Das is pleading with his mind to just worship the two lotus feet of the son of Nanda, which makes one fearless. So whatever we're dealing with, fear, material discomfort, we can take that shelter. And the end of that bhajan is, I find it particularly nice. He says, it is the desire and great longing of Govinda Das to engage himself in the 9 processes of bhakti. And he lists them. So we should make it our intention as well, in a humble mood, like Govinda, to engage in those 9 processes. And the foremost of those 9 is Shravanam Kirtanam, or hearing and chanting. So, and it's not hearing from ourselves and chanting alone, and it's not just hearing from someone else and chanting with others. We have to do both of these things. Our process is omniverted. It's both internal and external. That we have to practice in this way. In the 6th canto, Prabhupada says, because a Vaishnava fully takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he personally has no problems, but because he is compassionate towards the fallen, conditioned souls, he is always thinking of plans to save them from their hellish life in this material body and the next. So as we progress in Krishna consciousness, as we start to make some advancement, get some mercy, get some reciprocation, get some understanding, that's when we are really able to start going external and start trying to preach and help other people who are in a very uncomfortable state of being. And by doing that, then we get help with the internal side. And when we, on the internal front, become stronger, then going external becomes that much more powerful. There's not a single devotee who's an empowered speaker who doesn't have strong sadhana, who doesn't have a strong internal bhajan. So we can do the simple things too if we're so inclined, feeding the hungry, giving warm clothes to people who are cold, things that are a little more material. But actually, Prabhupada says that preaching, Sankirtan, book distribution, what Bhaktisiddhanta calls Namahata, or the marketplace of the holy name, this is the highest welfare work that we can do. It goes beyond, clothing somebody nicely or feeding them, making sure their belly's full, because we can, create a nice material situation for people, and that's nice, but they're still going to be stuck in the cycle of birth and death. But to help somebody get engaged in the process to ultimately relieve them of that misery of samsara is really the best thing we can do. And by doing that, then Krishna becomes very pleased. And when he becomes pleased with us, then he becomes obliged to give us his shelter. Mahaprabhu tells us so many times that he wants us to share what we have with everyone who's willing to take it. And it's said, Mahaprabhu is offering Krishna prema to everybody, but not everybody's willing to take it, and that's the problem that he has. It's not that he can't give pure love of God to everybody, it's that not everybody's willing to take it. So we have to find those few people who are intelligent enough to accept and share it with them. They're not necessarily going to come out of the woodwork on their own. We have to do a little bit of work here too. And it's, when we think about it, if we're just sitting and, chanting in the temple or chanting at home, and not going out and trying to help, it's a very selfish thing, to not enter the preaching field in whatever capacity we have. Not everybody's necessarily meant to be, a big Sankirtan devotee. We don't all have to be Paramakurunas and Parameshvars and Vijay Prabhus and go out and distribute 100-something books a day. But we can all do something. We can all serve in some capacity. We can all engage in Sankirtan in one way or another. And by doing that, that's how we actually take shelter of Krishna. That's our process. Because we can't, like these kings have, we can't send a messenger and say, Krishna, I want your shelter. And then you get Krishna's shelter. We have the go-between between ourselves and Krishna, Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta, our own Diksha, Shiksha gurus. They're called the transparent via medium between us and Krishna, but we have to be an active participant. It's not just sit back and wait for Krishna to save the day. We have to be an active participant in our shelter taking and our shelter receiving. So with that, if anybody has any urgent questions, then we can take those. Any nice comments, any concerns, complaints, or chastisements.
This is this particular passage is a perfect example of what Krishna explains to Arjuna in the 7th chapter of the 4 types of personalities, pious personalities who approach him. In this case, so we have 4: Artha, Jigyasur, Artharthi, and Jnani. So this is the example of the Artha, those who are in miseries, trying to alleviate suffering, and then you approach Krishna. So it's not, in the pure surrender, but it's mixed. It's mixed. Specifically, there's a particular motivation, personal motivation, that is there in approaching and taking shelter of Krishna. So it's a very clear example of that, of the kings, in this very distressful situation, approaching Krishna and take shelter of Krishna. Prabhupada in the purport explains that, very often happens that when the motivations becomes fulfilled by Krishna's shelter, then one takes it easy and even, leaves Krishna's shelter. It's something that can happen. An important part of, is something that you mentioned at the end of the class, that taking a very active role in the process of surrendering is the instructions have been given by the acharyas. That is not mercy, Krishna's mercy, but it's also our actions, in following Krishna's mercy. So we have a part to do. Krishna is lifting us, but we have to hold. It's like the example that Ramanujacharya gave of the baby monkey being taken from point A to point B by the mother monkey. So you're depending on Krishna to take us from, our conditioned position to pure devotional service, but we have to hold. So there's an action that is there. So that part is what is expected. And in one sense, I was just thinking, here's here's the kings, approaching Krishna in this distress. And what is the type of practices that Krishna is given, exemplified at that time, especially for rulers, for leaders, is following this very strict example of dharma, following duties, religious duties. So there is a particular practice, as the things that you do, meditation, offerings, especially the the glorification and the service to the brahmanas, hearing from the brahmanas. So Krishna has that whole sadhana that he gave for that time in principle. It's like that. So you hold to that, and then obviously you elevate yourself. And then there's the example of the Pandavas and Queen Kunti, who are perfect example of unalloyed devotees doing all the stuff, and taking shelter of Krishna in distressful situation, but it's in another level. So I was just appreciating that in that sort of contrast.
Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.